everyone. My name is Danielle Ruger-Morawski. I am the Associate Director of Partnerships at Parker Dewey, and I'm very excited to talk to you all today about micro-internships because as I kind of previewed, they can really help address all those challenges that we're seeing in the poll. If you haven't already filled that out, take a second, let us know which of those resonate with you. And if there's something not in that poll, please feel free to put it in the chat. Now I'm going to jump pretty quickly into the presentation and showing you how to do things. But if you're like me, then just sitting and listening isn't, something that's very easy to do. So if that's the case, I'm putting a link in the chat. While I'm talking to you about what micro-internships are, please feel free to hit this right here. To be clear, there's no cost. You don't have to follow through with it. You'll probably want to, but to create your account. So that way, when we start talking about best practices and how to make sure your profile is in good shape, if you don't already have that Parker Dewey account, you'll have it ready so you can follow along step by step. And if you do have your account, now's a great time to log in. So when we get to that place, you can make some of those updates. So with that, want to start by addressing some of those challenges that you may be facing based on the results of the poll that you are facing and making it clear that you are not alone in facing these challenges. Oh, I see people are already putting questions in the chat and I love it. I'm not sure I totally understand this question. The person's asking how to apply correctly by providing the correct information. I'm not sure in what context you mean, if you could add some clarification, but that is a great point to bring up. I am going to be keeping an eye on the chat. So if you have a question as we're going along, feel free to pop it in there. If I get behind, I will catch up at the end, but I am trying to keep an eye on it. So maybe you're not sure what you want to do. So you don't want to start off with a full summer or a full semester commitment where you're like, well, I might realize a week into it, I don't really like it. Maybe you're just struggling to get selected for opportunities. That's that whole cycle of you need experience to get a job, but you need a job to get experience. Well, where am I supposed to start? Maybe you just want to explore different things. Maybe you're seeing opportunities, but those opportunities are unpaid and you're looking at the budget and you're looking at the opportunities and you're going, these two things do not line up. Maybe, you're just struggling to figure out a place to start. All these things, again, can be addressed by micro-internships. So I'm going to start by explaining exactly what these micro-internships are. How do they differ from traditional internships? What are these things? So micro-internships are short-term professional projects. They're typically remote. So for those of you who said, there aren't opportunities near me or I don't have transportation, looks like 40% of you said I don't have things physically near me. 10% of you are struggling with the transportation. For you folks, these are great because they can be done from anywhere you have a reliable Wi-Fi connection, the majority of them anyway. These are professional projects. So let's say a company needs someone to go through some data for insights, or maybe they need someone to design an email marketing campaign. Maybe they need someone to just do some research on a topic. Those are all examples of what these professional projects may look like. And we see them from all different types of industries, all different types of departments. So regardless of what fields you're interested in, there are micro-internship opportunities that could be a great fit for you. Now, for those of you who said, I cannot afford unpaid opportunities, more than a quarter of you, something else to note about micro-internships is every single Parker Dewey micro-internship is paid. These are real projects that you're doing with real companies. These are not simulations. Again, the key word is real. And since you're doing real work, it makes sense that you get paid for that real work, especially since we see a lot of you can't afford to spend your time on something unless you're being compensated for that time. And then we, Parker Dewey, are the employer of record for all these projects, meaning you get paid by Parker Dewey, but you could be doing these projects for and with all sorts of different companies across the United States. Sometimes they're Fortune 100 companies, sometimes they're startups. So when we get on the platform, you'll see how there's a range of different opportunities. So I'm going to get some clarification for some things in the chat. Some internships, now, clarifying note, it's only micro-internships on Parker Dewey, so just making clear that there is a difference there. Have questions to fill in order to get in the position. The question is how to answer those correctly. Fantastic question. We are 100% going to cover this. I'm going to go over the basics of the profile first, but in case you want to jump ahead to a resource, I'm going to put one in the chat if you want to start looking ahead, because I get when you got a question, sometimes it's hard to sit tight and wait. One of the resources we're going to cover today that has some answers to that is our professional communication tips. So if you go down to when applying, it's got some resources that we're going to talk about more in depth later. And I'm putting that in the chat now, but we are going to get more in depth in a little bit. I see someone else is putting in some obstacles. They're having trouble standing out from the competition. They are struggling to find entry-level internships or jobs when they do not ask for much experience. They're having a hard time optimizing their resume. They're difficulty finding paid projects that may be considered valued by the firm you're applying for. So thank you. Those are also some challenges that resonate with a lot of students. And again, micro internships can help with those as well. When it comes to inability to stand out, getting micro internship experience can be that thing. Hey, I worked on this real project with this real company to help you stand out. These are a great place, even if you're a first or second year student, to start building that experience. So that question of finding entry-level experience, this can be the place to do it. Some companies are intentionally using micro internships to engage first and second year students or students that haven't started to build experience yet. They're building a pipeline, if you will. Resume. An interesting thing about Parker Dewey, we're going to talk about this with the profile, is you can only upload one resume, and we don't use an applicant tracking system. For those of you who aren't familiar with what an applicant tracking system is, it's a form of technology. I'm not sure if AI is actually involved or not, but basically there's technology going through the resume and looking for keywords. And sometimes, even if you're a great applicant, if the applicant tracking system isn't aligned with the language you happen to use, in some places that may keep you from being selected. Not the case on Parker Dewey. Humans are looking at your resumes and your applications, not technology. And then I see someone asking, is it possible to do an internship? No. A micro internship, yes, through Parker Dewey this summer, or has the cycle ended? So that's something else to know about Parker Dewey. These projects take place at all times of year. And because they're short term and because they are project based, companies aren't thinking, okay, I'm going to need an intern this summer, I'm going to need an intern next semester. They're thinking, I have a project I need done next week that I didn't know about until today. So I'm going to post a micro internship right now. So what that means is at all different times of year, new projects are being posted. And we're going to talk about this more when we hop into the platform. That is why it is so important for you to log in regularly, because most projects are only posted for maybe a week, usually a few days, sometimes just a few hours. So the more often you log into the Parker Dewey platform, the more opportunities you're going to see. It's not like traditional job boards where you're like, okay, I'm looking for a summer internship. Let me get in there in March and April and May. Maybe I'd be cutting it a little bit close. It's more log in regularly because these really are being posted at all times of year. Also asking, would it be possible to have more than one during the same time? Yes, 100%. You can do multiple micro internships. And I see there's still some confusion about micro internships versus traditional internship. Traditional internship, typically going to run the whole summer. Usually there's going to be set hours, from X time to Y time. You're going to be in a specific place. Maybe you know what you're going to be doing. Maybe you don't, but you got kind of an idea. With micro internships, instead of it being you're going to be in a specific place at a specific time, it's here's a specific project. You're going to meet with the company, you're going to get the details, but then there's typically a lot of flexibility as to when you work on that, as long as you're meeting the deadline. So internship, more time-based typically, micro internship, project-based, takes place at any time of year. So hopefully that helps clarify. I see someone asking, hey, I'm 4 years into my master's. Is it too late to do a micro internship in my educational career? No, we have companies that are specifically looking to engage master's students, sometimes even doctoral students. So you are welcome, even as a master's or doctoral student, to use the platform. Is the interview process for these positions as intensive as more traditional internships? No, in fact, a lot of the time, your application is your interview. So we're going to talk about what that looks like as well. Will these companies take international students? Great question. So one of the things that helps Parker Dewey Micro-Internship stand out is that even though, you could work with a wide range of companies, the employer of record is Parker Dewey. So you could work with like an IBM, but when you're getting paid by Parker Dewey. And what that means is if you're an international student and your school allows you to use this for CPT or pre-completion OPT, we are happy to do all the stuff needed by the employer of record. So the best response for international students wondering about eligibility is to connect with International Student Services at your institution, because they're going to be able to tell you what their process is, if micro internships will work, what's the best method for you. But yes, the companies are typically willing to, because we are the employer of record. And what about if I do not have experience you're in the right place. Micro internships are a great place to get that first experience. So hopefully when I was talking about micro internships, those benefits for y'all were clear, but really just want to make sure I spell them out. The accessibility, most of these are remote. You have a deadline, you get the details, but when you're working on it, if it's 3 a.m, if that's when you're going to do your best work, that's okay, because we know a lot of you have hectic schedules. These are not simulations. They're real projects, real experience that you are able to put on your resume, sometimes even in your portfolio. Now, again, you're going to add it as independent contractor of Parker Dewey, regardless of what company you work with. But in that description, you're going to be able to describe what you did. Typically, the company is going to be fine with you sharing their name, but you want to ask permission first. And even if they're not, there are ways to describe the company, the gravity of what you accomplished without using the company name. Again, that flexibility is huge, and you are building your professional network, because when you get selected, the first thing you're encouraged to do is schedule a kickoff meeting with the point of contact at the company that has the project need. So this is your opportunity to get to know them, ask them questions, connect with them on LinkedIn. Again, you really are adding them as a professional in your network. For those of you who aren't sure what you want to do, this is a great way to efficiently explore what you are interested in. Looks like about 10% of you fall in that category. And some companies are using micro internships very intentionally as a way to build their pipeline or maybe audition for specific longer term roles. So this micro internship may be a kind of way to test, would the person that we end up selecting be a good fit for our traditional internship? Or would the person that does this project actually end up being a great full-time hire for our company? So while it's not guaranteed, you want to make sure you put your best foot forward, because there may be a longer term opportunity waiting at the end of it. And we have already highlighted it, but highlighting again because we know it's important. These are all paid. I see there are people asking if they're using AWS or any cloud platform, and another person saying, I'm looking for coding micro internships. Yes, we see projects again across all different sorts of industries. We're going to talk about how to make sure you're seeing the widest breadth of projects. But something else I'll throw out there now is today is very much about how do you set up your profile? What are best practices for applying? If you're logging in regularly and you are still not seeing opportunities that are of interest to you, something else that you might want to consider is this event that I'm putting in the chat right now. And this is a guide for how you can create your own opportunities with micro internships. This webinar is coming up in a week, and what we do in this session is we use Handshake and we use LinkedIn, and we coach you. How do you find contacts at specific companies of interest? So for example, maybe you are seeing projects from your industry, but you're like, oh, I really am interested in XYZ specific company. We coach you on how to find those contacts and how to professionally reach out to say, hey, I can't do a traditional internship for whatever reason. Maybe you're not geographically near them. Maybe you don't qualify yet. Maybe you don't have time. But have you heard of Parker Dewey Micro-Internships, and would you consider posting one for me? Now, again, as we're going to see, there are always opportunities from a range of different industries on the Parker Dewey platform, but we also want to make sure you have that resource if you do have your eye out for something specific, so you can take that initiative. I see someone saying, I've applied for 3 projects and haven't been selected yet. Am I doing something wrong? Potentially there's room for improvement, but I will say it is normal for folks to apply to somewhere between 5 and 10 micro internships before being selected. So that is just a quick note about the reality. These are designed to be easy to apply to. So even applying to 5 to 10 shouldn't take a ton of your time. So don't get deterred if you've applied for, 3, 4, maybe even like 7 or 8. If you've applied for more than 10 and you haven't been selected, that's usually an indication that something about your profile, something about your application responses might need some help. And again, we're going to talk about best practices for those today. But 3, it could be that you could do some things better, or it could just be a little bit of bad luck. The main advice is keep applying. And then how to get to apply to these so that I get selected. We're going to cover that today. So y'all have asked some great questions. So I'm going to scoot pretty quick through some of these. Who can do these? Stay on the line as long if you're at least 18 years old. This is open to students or recent graduates. There is no official cutoff for recent graduates, but what we will say is companies using Parker Dewey typically are intentionally trying to engage early career talent. So if you've been in your industry for like 5+ years or 10 years and you're not trying to make a career switch, you're probably not going to see your profile get as much attention as a current student or a recent graduate, because companies are trying to engage folks who could potentially do their traditional internship or their entry-level full-time role. We already talked about international students, but quick note, words are hard, undocumented students As long as you have a valid ITIN, you can do these micro internships too. So how does it work? Those questions we've been getting in the chat, like how do I set this up? How do I get selected? All that good stuff. We're going to get into it step by step. A reminder before we do that regardless of what companies you apply for projects with, we, Parker Dewey, are the employer of record. So what that means is we're keeping an eye on these opportunities to make sure they're appropriate, they're project-based, they're compensated fairly. And when you do get paid, you're going to get paid by Parker Dewey. So that means if any company, again, we're keeping an eye on things to make sure that folks are legit, but if any company ever says, hey, I need your social security, or I need your address, or I need any confidential information to pay you, say, no, 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 I'm not getting scammed today. Only Parker Dewey needs that. And if you have any struggles along the way, if you get selected, we are here to help. I see there's a question, does Parker Dewey have built-in resume optimization tools to help your resume stand out? That is not something that we have. Your best resource when it comes to making your resume stand out is going to be connect with your career center at your institution, because they're going to be most familiar with the program you're in, with the types of opportunities that are probably going to be appealing to you, and they're going to be best able to help you make sure that your resume is standing out appropriately. So with that, we're going to go ahead and hop in. So folks, if you have not already gone to this page to start creating your account, putting it in the chat again, this is the time to do so. I'm going to go ahead and log into my existing account. And what I'm going to do first is walk you through those pieces that are required. So if you're setting up your profile for the first time, you're going to be asked to put these things in. It might be in a slightly different order, but the things that you must have. So we've got the basics, your name, an email address. Quick plea, please use an email address that you check regularly. There are a few things more heartbreaking for the Parker Dewey team than seeing someone that has a great profile, they did a great application, they got selected, and then they didn't respond within 24 hours. So the company deselected them and selected someone else. Make sure it's an email address you're checking regularly, because again, micro internships move quickly. We're going to ask you for your current address and your permanent address. And you may be wondering, well, didn't this lady say these are remote? Why do they need that information? And the reason is because these companies, again, are looking for talent in a lot of situations that could potentially do longer term opportunities. So having this information just lets them know, okay, maybe they're not located near me now, but during their spring breaks, they're kind of in the area. Maybe they could come in, do an in-person tour. We could see even more. Is this person a good fit? Or, maybe they're near me in the summers. So this person could do my traditional internship. Now, to be clear, this is not relevant for all the projects, not even necessarily majority, but it's helpful for those companies who do have those longer term goals, which is why we require that information. You'll also be required to put in the information about your U.S. work authorization. So, if you're a U.S. citizen or if you got something different. And that's just because, again, some of these companies do have longer term hiring goals. And some of them may already know, unfortunately, I'm not in a position to offer sponsorship. And if that's the case and they are using this as an audition, they don't want to waste your time or their time selecting someone who couldn't potentially fill that full-time role. Again, not relevant a lot of the time, but for those who have those goals, it's just helpful for them to be able to know. The next required section is going to be your education section. And this is a section you have to fill out. And the reason we require this is because companies have the ability to feature projects to specific schools. So again, if they're looking for someone that could potentially do an in-person internship down the road, even though this project is remote, they might say, okay, I'm only featuring this to local schools because I want someone who I know is in the area. So that's why if you've attended multiple institutions, you want to make sure that you add those multiple institutions in your education section. So if you went to one school for your associates, another school for your bachelor's, you're in your master's now, another school for your doctorate, one, you are very educated, good for you. Two, make sure that you add all of those institutions to your education section. You see this little line right here, you can add as many as you need. Now, sometimes we have folks who get confused about the major or program, or they say, I put something in, but it's not letting me move forward. Quick note that you have to hit return or this add button to officially add it. So if you're getting stuck there, that's what you need to do. The next section that is going to be required is the demographics section. And want to make it clear, companies do not see this information. This is just for us, the Parker Dewey team on the back end, because our goal is to create a platform and opportunities that are equitable and accessible. And this information allows us to know how well we're doing at that goal. If for some reason you still don't want to disclose, you still have that option. But again, this isn't something that companies see. So we have covered now the things that you must do to be able to start looking at opportunities. Now we're going to backtrack and we're going to talk about the things that you really should do to help yourself get selected. So I'm going to go all the way back to this profile section. And one of the things we skipped here was this personal statement. So I'm going to go back to our professional communication resource here. This time I'm going to put in this preparing to apply. I'm going to put this in the chat. This personal statement is really a helpful opportunity for you to kind of quickly clarify, real quick, here's who I am, here's what I'm doing on the Parker Dewey platform. And it just helps companies understand your intentions. So if you're struggling to understand, well, what should I even put in this section? We've got a quick formula for you. You don't have to follow this formula, but again, if you're stuck, if you're trying to figure out where to begin, this is a good place to do so. So the first part of the formula is to maybe select a couple of adjectives that not only genuinely represent you or true to you, but are also relevant to the types of projects you're interested in. So for example, if you're interested in social media type projects, you might want to highlight that you are organized, because folks who do things with social media are managing lots of assets, lots of timelines. That's a great trait to have if it's genuinely true to you. If you're interested in coding projects, like somebody else said earlier, being process-minded, analytical, if those are things that are true to you, that might be helpful to highlight. So I see the chat calm down to make sure everyone is still there. I got another poll for you. I want you to think about which of those adjectives probably not going to be a good adjective to include in your personal statement. And while y'all work on that poll, I'm going to talk about the other parts of the formula. The next piece that you might want to do is add one or two strengths or skills or experiences that, again, are relevant to the types of projects you're interested in. So if you're interested in data projects and you have a certificate in data analytics, you might want to highlight that here if it's not already in your education section. Maybe you did it with like HubSpot or something else that isn't one of our preset educational options. This is a place to highlight it. Maybe you have experience writing press releases. If you're interested in public relations projects, those types of things are things you can highlight here. And then the last part is, hey, what are you doing on Parker Dewey? Some of you may just be looking to explore. That is a-okay. You can say that. Some of you may have more specific goals. This is a great opportunity to highlight those as well. Just make sure if you do have specific goals, don't make them so specific that it'll keep you from being selected for the projects you're interested in. So if you have specific goals, but you're like, this project maybe isn't exactly that, but I see how it could help me in my career, just update that personal statement. Make sure it's broad enough that they'll still consider you. So here are some examples of that formula in play. First person for their adjective said they're ambitious and they're tech savvy. They highlighted their writing skills and they said, I'm just looking for opportunities to begin building real world experience. So we see the three parts of that formula in play. The next person said, I'm an analytical, organized, and proactive. Those were their adjectives. Economics major with a certificate in data analytics, looking to build awareness of potential career paths. Great goal. The last person said they're a hardworking graduate. They highlighted their research skills and experiencing developing and implementing marketing strategies. And since they were a little farther on in their education, they had a more specific goal. They said, I'm interested in engaging mission-driven organizations. So hopefully, I see the question in the chat, are these adjectives too cliche though? And that's where you kind of have to make a call for yourself and the industry you are interested in. So I know we've all heard like those industry buzzwords like synergy and dynamic. If you're saying I'm a dynamic individual, if you're interested in sales type roles, someone might find that appealing. If you're applying to work at a nonprofit, they might be like, oh, that's some corporate jargon. So that's where an awareness of the types of things you're interested in come into. But to the point in the chat, again, you want to pick words that are a little bit more specific, if possible, to what you want to do. And that's why most of you got this exactly right. I'll share the results so you can see where everyone's at. Nice. That's probably not going to be an adjective that you want to include in your personal statement because it's too generic. It's not specific to what you want to be doing. Most folks are going to assume that you either are nice or at least going to fake being nice for the sake of professionalism. Now, if your goal is to say like, I've got people skills, I'm great at communication, those are the ways you would word those things that are actually relevant to different types of industries. I see we've got another question. Is it a bad idea to not use pronouns like I in favor of including more information about me? Fantastic question. So for example, on your resumes, again, your Career Center is going to be your best resource for resumes. Typically, it's not advised to use words like I or me because it gets really repetitive, right? If every bullet point starts with I did this, better to just start with an action verb. When it comes to your personal statement on Parker Dewey, it could go either way because it's just one piece that the company is going to see. And we're going to show you in a minute how it looks for the company. So if you start this with I, if that makes you comfortable, you're welcome to do that. If you rather just start with a passionate whatever, or a sustainability major passionate about, whatever that may be, then that is fine too. It's really a up to you call when it comes to the personal statement. Any questions about the personal statement, please feel free to put those in the chat. Unless I see more, I'm going to hop along to the next not required but highly encouraged section, and that is the experience section. So to show you what kinds of things you should consider putting here, I'm going to hop over to this preview and I'm going to highlight these examples we have here are not necessarily internship experiences. They're not necessarily job experiences. Keep in mind that even if you don't have any professional experiences yet, you can and should still make use of this section by including things like class projects. Even if you're in your first or second year, I'm sure you have done a project or written an essay or something that shows your communication skills, your organizational skills, those types of things. So don't discount class projects, especially the ones that are really relevant to the types of projects you want to apply for. You could also include extracurricular projects. If you're part of a club, if you've helped organize an event, those types of things, you can include those here too. And if you've done volunteer projects or just passion projects, those are things that can go here as well. You'll notice again, it says experience, not paid experience, just experience. And all of those things you're doing with your time, all those experiences you're having, if they're relevant to what you want to do, this is a good time to highlight them. Scooting now to the resume section. And I know some of you may be thinking, well, the lady just told us that we have to put experience. Why do I also have to upload a resume? And this is where I'm going to refer back to this preview section. Hopefully, it's going a little slow, but hopefully once it loads, it helps you understand. They see what you put in that experience section before having to click into anything else. Whereas with the resume section, they have to click that little link that says resume. So oh no, Parker Dewey, why? So we are updating a lot of things on the platform right now. So that is probably why this is happening. I'm going to take this opportunity to side note, say there are a lot of exciting updates that are going to be coming to the Parker Dewey platform. I don't have a specific date, but very soon. So just keep an eye out for those. So what I want you to do is think about the experience section. Now we're running again as a teaser, if you will, to get the companies to say, okay, they've got some experiences I'm interested in. I'm going to click on this resume. I'm going to look deeper into their application responses, which again, we're going to talk about in a second. But you still want to upload that resume because we have seen that applicants who upload resumes are significantly more likely to be selected. Even if there's not a lot on it yet, companies feel that having a resume just shows that dedication to your professional persona, and they appreciate it. Same thing with adding your LinkedIn profile. Now, if you don't already have a LinkedIn profile, they are free to make. It's super easy, and there's never a better time to make one if you don't have one than right now. Because LinkedIn profiles are just going to make it easier to connect with your supervisor, to stay in touch, to connect with your colleagues and your future jobs, to connect with your fellow students now. So make that LinkedIn, add the profile here. I've literally sat with a company who was like having trouble making a decision between two candidates. One of them had a LinkedIn profile and the other didn't. And they said, you know what? Everything else is pretty equal. I'm going to pick the one with the LinkedIn profile because it just comes off as a little bit more professional. And again, you don't need to have a ton of experience to have a LinkedIn. You can have a LinkedIn as a first semester freshman. So do yourself a favor, take that step for professionalism. You also have the opportunity, if you have a website or portfolio of some kind, like if you're a graphic design major or something like that, this is a good place to highlight that. If you're interested in coding and you have a GitHub, this is a great place to put something like that as well. So go ahead and take advantage of those opportunities to really kind of show who you are and what you got. And then if you maybe are in those areas, but you don't have a GitHub or a portfolio site, you're just early on, you have a few things, but you don't have anything like that, that's where this document section can come in. So this is a place where I gave the example of press releases. If you have one you're really proud of, you could upload a press release you've written. You could upload an article you've written. You could perhaps upload a video. What I would recommend instead of a video, since we have the file size limitation, would be instead to create a document and then say, this is the video I created for social media, XYZ, and then put a link in there and then upload the PDF. So if you have any trouble running into the file size, that's one way to consider getting around it. But basically, this is your opportunity. If there are some things that you think would be beneficial for a company to see or know about when they're making their decision, but you don't have like a website link, this is a place where you can make sure they see those things. Now, a word to the wise though, whatever you title the document you upload, so if it's titled like docx and it doesn't have anything else, that is what the company is going to see. Like it would just say docx here. So don't upload anything that's like final assignment course number. Upload article on topic, insert the actual topic. Like make it something that's going to be compelling for the company to click on. I see I've got a question. In the experience description sector, are there companies looking to see that? It was displayed in preview, so just curious. Great question. So that is one of, when I mentioned those updates, that is one of those updates that's going to be coming right now. When you look at your preview, you don't see the description. When companies look at your profile, they do see the description. So yes, take a moment, spend a little bit of time on that. And if you're not sure how to write a compelling description for experiences, again, your career center is going to be a great resource. But if you need a quick tip, start with an action verb. So don't say like did, had, was. Do something that puts an image in the person's mind. So ran, managed, organized. Then quantify if possible. So give a sense of scale. Did you organize 2 things? Did you organize 10 things? Did you manage 1 person? Did you manage 3 people? Again, could be a variety of roles. And then the impact. So did you end up having higher attendance at this event you planned with your sorority? Did you end up seeing more engagement on the post? So that's the formula. The answer to your question is yes, add a description. And if you need help figuring out how to add a description, action verb, quantify, impact is typically going to do you some good service. Should we do paragraph or bullet form? There's nothing really particular as long as you're consistent. So companies aren't going to go, I don't see a bullet. We're not picking this person. But just make sure however you write it, you're consistent across your different experiences. But fantabulous question. All right, folks, if you have any other questions about the profile, this is the time to put those in the chat. I am keeping an eye. Thanks for the respect for the transition earlier, Javier. And if not, we'll start popping over to looking at opportunities, going once, going twice, and you can still put questions in later, but we are going to hop over to our dashboard. So if you missed it, what I did was I went up here in the corner. You can always go back and forth between your profile. And from any of these sections, you'll see this little link over here. You can go back to the dashboard, and this is where you are going to see the opportunities that are currently available. Now, a few notes about what you're seeing here. You will notice we do not have a lot in the way of filters. Specifically, we do not have a filter for major. And I know that may seem like an oversight, but I promise you it's intentional. We have seen just so many students and recent graduates who have ended up getting full-time job offers, starting whole grown-up careers based on their how they did a micro-internship project that would have never popped up if they had been able to filter for their major. So we intentionally don't have that filter because we want you to look through, look at the titles, and be open to the different projects. Now, another note that I'm going to make right now, I'm going to scroll to the bottom so you can see, at any given time, there are always opportunities on the platform, but it's not an overwhelming number of opportunities. And that is, again, because these cycle so quickly. You can see from these start dates, this is only going to be here for another 4 days before it makes a selection and kick off. This one is given a little bit more advanced notice. This one's probably going to be gone tomorrow. Most of these are only on the platform for a very short amount of time before they make a description or a selection. And that's why the more often you log in, the more opportunities you're going to see. So that is a tip for you. Log in regularly to see more opportunities. I see a question. Are there any consequences to adding too many bullet points in the experience section? So we're going to show you in a little bit what your preview looks like to the companies. I would try to make it stick to like maximum probably 3 at this stage in your career. Now, if you're someone who is a career changer, you've had a full-time role in the past, and that full-time role, even though you're switching careers, has a lot of relevance to what you want to be doing in the future, like there are 5 bullet points and all of them are meaningful to your future goals, a full-time role could warrant 5 bullet points or 5 different description kind of action items there. But most of the time, at this stage in your career, a max of 3 is going to be plenty. Sometimes 1 might even be good. I see someone asking, are there opportunities available all year round? Yes, there are. So a reminder, folks, that with micro internships, companies aren't planning a whole semester or a year ahead. They're not going, oh, I want an intern next fall. Let me post this now. They're going, I just had a meeting with my supervisor this morning, and I need this project. I need help with this project done within the next like 2 to 3 weeks. So I'm posting this project now so I could select someone by the end of the week and get it done by the end of the month type of a thing. So this really is on demand for companies. And what that means as a result is projects are being posted at all different times of the year. Have we ever had someone who got selected for multiple micro internships at the same time? Heck yeah, we have. So I'll take this opportunity to show you some of our success stories. These are micro interns that have just, done amazing things. They don't encompass every success story we have. They're just the ones we've had the time to write about. But for the question, have you had folks do multiple micro interns? I think the other day I was looking at someone who has done like 30, but the success story I like is Tegan. At the time we interviewed her, she had done like 18, and she used some of the money she earned to buy a puppy, and I just think that's adorable. So it's my favorite one to share. But if you want to see other examples of students who have done multiple or gotten job offers or all sorts of exciting things, those success stories are in the chat. I see something like digital marketing is very broad with many roles and responsibilities. It seemed pretty hard to apply for jobs with only 3 highlighted bullet points. And that's where you want to start to get discerning with it. So in your description, just going back to this profile and all that, you're not going to be able to include typically everything you did if you had a digital marketing role, but pick the things that you did in that experience. If it was an internship, that are most relevant to the types of projects you want to apply for. And if you're having trouble with that, again, I would recommend connecting with Career Services. They are pros at helping folks discern what is the information that companies are most going to want to know based on your goals. So going back to looking at these projects, if you decide you're interested in a project, you can see before you click in whether it's on-site or remote. Again, the majority are remote. You can hit the drop down and you're going to see some more information about the project itself as well as the company description. You'll see when they're hoping for the project to kick off, when they'd like it to be completed, the estimated number of hours, and this is estimated because you don't actually have to track your hours with micro internship, but we ask companies to give a ballpark so you have an idea, can I fit this in my schedule? And this can really be a benefit to you in a couple of ways. If you're a first or second year student, you're like, okay, I know how to do this, but this is my first time really doing it professionally. I'm really going to be meticulous. I'm really going to take my time. If you take an extra half hour or an hour, as long as you hit the deadline, that's okay. No one's mad. No one's frustrated. If you, by contrast, are a senior or a master's student, you're like, oh, I could do this. I've got tools. I can do this in 25 hours. No problem. Maybe you could do it in 20. I don't know. That's okay too. You'll still get paid the amount that you see here. And you'll see that these vary a little bit from project to project. So you always know, you can make the decision. Is this project going to be worth my time? Typically, you're going to see these somewhere between 15 to 25 per estimated hour. We recommend to companies to do between 20 and 25, but there's a little bit of flexibility there. If you decide you're interested in the project, this first question, why do you think we should select you for this opportunity, is always going to be there. Companies do have the ability to ask other questions and they get to determine what those questions are. But as you can see from this example, sometimes this question is going to be the only question, which is why it is so important to answer it thoroughly and well. And that brings us back to the resources we're going to cover for doing so. I'm catching up in my slides now. Now you all will receive these slides afterwards. This is just designed to make it easy for folks who aren't here live, but I'm going to catch up now to how your responses matter. So here we have a blog post that really breaks down some tips for making sure you're responding to these questions in a way that's going to be helpful. So short answer tips is now in the chat for you. Again, you'll receive the slides with all these links too. And the first thing we encourage you to do is look for the question under the question. And I know it sounds a little bit like I'm a troll under a bridge and I'm doing riddles, but what we mean by this is when you are going to respond, that first question, why do you think we should select you, is always there. It's always the same question. But depending on what you're applying for, you should respond to this question in different ways. Because, for example, if you're applying for a project that involves coding, your response for why they should pick you is going to look very different than if you're someone applying for a project that involves social media content creation. So when we say look for the question under the question, what we mean is think about the context of the project, look at the company information, make sure your response reflects what they're probably looking for, probably interested in. The next tip is to use the description to your advantage. So look at how they are writing, look at what they're saying they're looking for in these projects. Sometimes they have listed specific skills that they're looking for. If they've done this and you have one of those skills, highlight that in your response. Use this as a resource to really highlight, I have what you're looking for. The next tip that we have here, perhaps the most important one in my opinion, is to show instead of tell. And if you're wondering what that means, I'm going to click back into this resource I shared earlier, the professional communication tips for when applying. And I'm going to give you an example of what it looks like to tell versus what it looks like to show. So I want you to imagine that, that first question, why should we select you? And it's for a project related to social media content calendar development. This person is telling. If their response is, you should select me for this project because I've experienced making attention-grabbing social media posts, it's not a bad reason to select someone for a project like that, but it's not really compelling. I want you to imagine that the company who's making a selection is having a conversation with their colleague. Colleague A is sitting here going, hey, colleague B, who do you think we should select for that social media project? Colleague B might go, oh, what about that person who has experience doing attention-grabbing social media posts? Colleague A is going to go, buddy, that's all of them. It's a social media project. They all have that experience. Which one are you talking about? Now, let's look at this example number 2. Same reason, but this person has shown as well as told. And they've done so using something called the STAR method. So before I get into it, I'm going to break down. STAR method stands for situation, task, action, and result. So if you're not sure if you've shown, ask yourself, have I given a situation? Have I demonstrated a task? Did I share my action? And did I give a result? So here is that in action. Same reason, you should select me for this project because I've experienced creating attention-grabbing social media posts. Then they gave a situation. As the social media chair for my sorority, then they gave a task. I was in charge of the social media campaign for this fundraiser. Then they gave an action. I planned a series of posts and videos across 3 different social media channels over the month leading up to the event. And then they gave the result. One of the videos got record engagement and it contributed to increased attendance. Again, this is not an essay. When you break it down, it's only 1, 2, 3, 4 sentences. These are not designed to be essays. But in those 4 sentences, this candidate has shown us with a real little story, situation, task, action, result, why they should be selected. So let's replay with this response in mind, that conversation between the 2 colleagues. We're back to colleague A. So colleague B, who do you think we should select for that social media content calendar? Colleague B, oh, what about the person who did those cool videos for Night in Pink? They even uploaded a PDF to their Parker Dewey profile where I could click on the link. I watched the videos, they were really neat. Colleague A, I know exactly who you're talking about. I liked them too. Let's select them. High five for posterity. So that is why you want to make sure you are showing instead of just telling. The next tip we have is to mirror the tone in your writing. Now, I am a millennial, so I'm going to try. It's going to be terrible, just putting that up front. If the posting has stereotypically professional language, match that energy. If the posting says, we're looking for someone to do a high-key bussin' TikTok video, no cap, and that is organic to you, then match that energy. The next is to make sure, again, you're not making it too long. Typically 2 to 4 sentences is going to be effective. And then the next tip is to go beyond a yes or no. So I've got another poll for you since the room got a little quiet again. Usually I at least get some giggles at my my terrible Gen Z speak. And the question here is, if you were a Why am I having trouble finding this poll? If you were an employer, which of these would you select? So let me find this here. There it is. So if you were an employer, and this is a real question that we saw for a micro internship once, the question is, have you ever done mystery shopping before? And I want you to select, if you were the company, which of these responses would you be most likely to select? And imagine that the last one didn't get cut off. So while you are thinking about that, folks, I'm gonna just kind of go ahead and also encourage you, if you haven't already, if you have questions about how to respond to those questions, this is a good time while we're waiting for those poll results to ask them. And somebody is on it. How long is the typical turnaround time to hear back from applying for these micro internships? Great question. And the answer to that is typically they're going to let you know by their anticipated start date. So whatever this start date is, that's typically by then, maybe a couple days before then, when they're going to make a selection. You can always know the status of your application, however, by looking in this applied section. If you have something under this active application section, that means your project or your application is still being considered. And every once in a while, they may have had intentions of selecting by that start date, and life got in the way. They may be a few days behind. But if it's still in this active section, that's how you know your profile is still being considered, your application is still being considered. If it's moved to this past application section, that is how you know, okay, they got my application, but they did not select me for this one, so I know I'm no longer being considered here. And then they also have a follow-up question. Sending thank you emails is often advised, but I feel like that is not enough. And that is something you don't need to worry about with Parker Dewey. Because this is designed to be an efficient and on-demand resource for companies, you actually don't have the ability to message the companies unless they message you first. And we're going to talk about what that looks like when they do. But you don't need to worry about sending a thank you after you've submitted your application. This is designed to move quickly. And would calling or emailing the company directly be beneficial or not suggested? Actually not suggested. Actually, technically, I know nobody reads the terms of service typically in a lot of things, but that is technically a violation of our terms of service because we want everyone to have equal and equitable access to these opportunities. And some folks may have a connection at the company, they may not. We want it to be based on what you're actually putting in the platform and not anything external. So if you were the person that originally went to a company and said, hey, would you post this for me? They were like, oh my gosh, yes, this is great. We're posting a project. And then you apply and you want to send that person you already had a connection with because you reached out to them specifically about this, a message to say, hey, thanks so much, I've applied. That is appropriate because you initiated creating that project. If you're applying for a project and you're like, hey, my dad's uncle's cousin, there's probably an easier way to define that family relationship, but I know they work at this company, let me reach out to them. That would be a violation of terms of service because you weren't the one that prompted the project. So I hope that makes sense. I see someone asking if we don't get picked, will they say it's a no? Usually most companies don't give back a yes or a no. And the answer is this way right here, whether it's inactive or past, is the way you're going to know. Because this is designed to be quick for companies, because they're looking typically to move real fast, they are not required to respond to every single project or application. Now, sometimes you may get a response saying, hey, we really liked your application. We went with someone else for this one, but maybe this other project is posted, or we'd like to keep you in mind in the future. They're just not required to do so. I see a question, is there any way I can ask them to do school credits if I get the job? So the way that works is we, Parker Dewey, are the employer of record. So it really depends on your school and their credit bearing requirements. So I would talk to your institution, explain the Parker Dewey model, like, hey, I'll be working with XYZ company, but Parker Dewey will be the employer of record. Some schools are a little hesitant about it because there's typically a feedback process and they want that feedback from the person who's directly working with that student. Well, that person would be the person at the other company, not necessarily us. But we are happy to do it and just say, as far as we know, things are going well. And at the end of the micro internship, the company is encouraged to give feedback, and we can share, if they do give that feedback as well. How do people get paid? Hey, that's a good question. Let's move along since we only have 10 minutes left. Those of you got it exactly right, though. Going to go back to our poll results. Acknowledging the truth. I haven't done mystery shopping before, but highlighting transferable skills. Skills you have that may be from a different experience, but could be applied to this other one. Even if you don't have that exact experience, going to make it more likely for you to be selected. So This is what the company sees. So as mentioned, if you have, this example didn't have it, but if you have highlighted experience, they'll be able to see the description. They see the personal statement. I forgot to mention too, but do advise adding a photo, nice professional head and shoulders. If for some reason you're not comfortable adding a photo, you could always add a logo from your institution or just something to indicate what types of things you're interested in, but just a good idea to make sure you're putting that professionalism out there. And once companies receive your application, that's when they have the ability to send you a message. So we're going to show you what that looks like. They might ask a follow-up question. They might ask to do a brief Zoom interview or something like that to make sure it's a good fit. But most of the time, because these are so low risk, low commitment for companies, they feel comfortable making a selection and approving someone based entirely on the combination of the profile and the application responses. No further interview process. So for the person earlier on that said, what do interviews look like? A lot of the time, there are no interviews. Sometimes there are, but most of the time, there are not. So that is why it is so important to make sure your profile and your application responses are in good shape. Now, we've also talked about this a little bit too, but just a quick guide for going through. We talked about applied. If you've been selected, it'll show up here, pretty intuitive. Once your project has been marked as complete by your supervisor, it'll show up here. This is where you can also see any feedback they've left. And if they do send you a message, this is where it'll pop up. You'll also get an email notification. And this is a reminder, again, the only people who ever need to know your payroll information are Parker Dewey. So if anyone else asks for it, say, no, 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 no. You don't need that information. Again, we're keeping an eye on things, but we just want to make sure we're giving you extra information to make sure you are protecting yourselves as well. So once selected, you are going to get resources to help you be successful. If you are not sure how to handle something or how something should go, or you're just, got anxiety about something, whatever it may be, reach out to us. We're happy to help. And you can ask your micro-internship supervisor at the company too, hey, is anything I'm working with confidential? If it is, they'll let you know. But if it's not, maybe go to a faculty member. Maybe if you have an alumni mentor, say, hey, I'm working on this project. This is how I'm thinking about tackling it. Do you have any input? As long as the company says it's okay for you to do that. And then the question, when do I get paid? And we've got pay FAQs. I'll put those in the chat. But to answer the quick question first is you are paid by Parker Dewey. So when you get selected for a micro internship, you are going to, again, receive that compensation by Parker Dewey, and we process pay once a month. So for example, if you completed your micro internship today, your supervisor marked it complete, that means we're going to process that pay at the end of June, depending on how fast your bank is. And if you filled out the forms that you'll receive when you're selected, that means you're probably going to see that pay in your bank account on the first or second day of May. Again, it depends on how fast your bank moves. So if you've been selected for a project, don't ask the person at the company, hey, when am I going to get paid for this? They're going to be like, I don't know. I already paid Parker Dewey. They take care of it. Ask us if you have questions. But again, once your project is marked completed, you'll get that pay at the start of the next month. Just to give you a little preview, this is our micro-internship success checklist. This is what you will receive if you are selected for a micro-internship. And again, that first step is to connect with the supervisor that works at the company with the project need. And we know that maybe that's intimidating for some of you who haven't done professional outreach before, who maybe haven't had a professional experience. So we've got resources like this template to help you reach out confidently. So make sure you make use of the resources in this checklist. That's just one. We also have the forms to get paid. We also have other resources to set you up for success. So from a professionalism standpoint, we're really trying to do everything we can to make sure this is a positive experience. And same thing for after your micro internship. You'll get another checklist to help you reflect, to help you add this to your resume and to your LinkedIn account. Again, you're going to add this regardless of what company you work with as an independent consultant of Parker Dewey. And then most of the time, the companies will give you permission to use their name in the description. But if they don't, you'll just describe the client like this example. So a Chicago-based SAS platform instead of saying a company name, because this is real experience again. So you really should put it on your resume and your LinkedIn. And that's why we encourage you to do so. And we also have a template to help you share this out on LinkedIn. Let other folks know, hey, I had this professional experience. Look what I accomplished. So coming full circle now to those stories we talked about at the beginning, some of those challenges that other students were facing that very similar to those challenges y'all were talking about in the poll and talking about in the chat. Whether you're not sure what you want to do and you're exploring, whether you need to make money while you're getting experience, because that's just the financial reality, whether you're looking for that first step, like the student at the bottom who said, I finally had something to talk about now because of my micro internships, it helped me get notice, or whether you're just trying to do a career pivot. Reminder that micro internships can help. And we had those success stories linked in the chat before, but these are going to be linked in the slides if you want to read more of those. And that is really the entirety of the micro internship process, folks. I see I've got a couple questions I'm going to catch on real quick before I put a nice button on it. Can you have multiple micro internships? 100%. If you can handle it, you can even do multiple at the same time. If you've been selected for one and you don't think you could handle multiple and you've applied for multiple, you have the ability to withdraw your application. If you don't, or if you forget, we get it, life's busy, you're working on a project, you've got classes, things are going on, and you do get selected for another one and you realize, oh, I can't do both of these at the same time, just respond to your selection email, let us know. We will handle it, no harm, no foul. The only thing you could do that would be harm or foul is to not respond and not do the project. That's a bad look. That's considered ghosting. And if you do it twice, we do reserve the right to deactivate your Parker Dewey account. So in short, just communicate with us. Is it possible to do mock interviews with Parker Dewey? No, unfortunately, we do not have a full service career center, but typically your career center is going to have resources like that. If they don't, you might consider seeing if your local workforce organization or anything like that has a subscription to Big Interview. That's a really helpful tool for mock interviews. We're not affiliated in any way, just to be clear. I just used it in my previous life in career services. Are we going to be in constant contact with the company, or will they usually reach out in a different way? After you have been selected, then that communication is going to go off platform. So that is what this checklist helps you do. Once you receive the offer or the notice that you've been selected, you're going to get their email address, and that's when you're encouraged to reach out to them via email with this. And then you're going to set up, whatever way works best. We also have this tip down here for the follow-up for the meeting to make sure you have clear expectations going forward. So, going forward, are you going to touch base via email, via phone, via text? Is it going to be every day, every week? Is it a short enough project? Maybe that's not needed. And these are the things that, again, this guide encourages you to discuss during that kickoff meeting so you have clear expectations. It does vary a little bit from project to project. Do timelines for micro internships vary? Yes, they definitely do. Like if someone needs someone to just design a flyer, that's probably going to be a week turnaround. If someone needs someone to just pretty up a PowerPoint, that's probably going to be, maybe even just a few days. If someone is having someone doing the first phase of app development by researching what platform they should build on with the needs of that app in mind, that's probably going to take a little bit longer, and whoever's posting that project is probably going to keep that in mind. If you're able to get a return offer for a listed position, will you be contacted by the employer directly? Oh, great question. So this person is wondering, hey, you said after I apply, I'm not allowed to reach out to someone if I wasn't involved in creating that project. What if I've already done a micro internship and they want me to do another opportunity? At that point, you've already got that connection. And if they're posting another project they'd like you to apply for, they're probably going to tell you straightforward. But after you've done a micro internship, again, that person is part of your network. So you are not only welcomed, but encouraged, sorry, I'm trying to find my resource here, to stay in touch with that person. And we have resources to help you do that with recommendations to thank them, follow them on LinkedIn, keep them updated. So once you've connected with them, you are welcome and encouraged to keep in touch. You just can't try to find a contact since they're not listed to help you get selected initially, if that makes sense. I see if your previous experience had multiple responsibilities and you aren't able to summarize them in 3 bullet points or less, would it be an issue if we say one thing in our response to GEM questions, but not in our experience page? Great question. What I would ask you is, if the thing that you've left out of your description is important enough that you want to highlight it in your response, you may want to rethink which 3 bullet points you've highlighted. If it's a matter of in the description, you're just getting more detailed with it because that's relevant to the project, then that is a-okay and actually a great use of those responses to the questions. So it's a little bit depends on the specific situation, but yes, you can totally highlight specific things in your responses as long as it relates to an experience that is in your profile, there's not going to be like any red flags. So I know we are coming up on the hour. So with that, just want to cover these final steps for getting started. If you haven't already, folks, create that account. Make sure your profile is complete because again, your applications are really only two things, your profile and your application responses. So it's important that both are complete, free from errors, all that good stuff. Log in regularly. These projects move quickly, so logging in regularly is going to help you see more of them. Apply to all those projects that interest you. If you see something quickly, because again, they move quickly. Quickly is a key word. And reach out to companies of interest if they have not posted a micro internship yet. And again, that's where that creating your own opportunities webinar comes into play. One other thing I'll share in the chat is we do have a Parker Dewey LinkedIn page. I encourage you to give this a follow. We have tips, we have resources, we have reminders about these events. So it's just a nice thing to follow. And sometimes we'll highlight specific projects if they're like, we need a lot of applicants. Sometimes they will hire multiple for one project. Then this is a good place to see those and to read about experiences from other micro interns as well. So with that, if there are any other questions, I'm going to continue to catch up on those. But before I get to answering them for the official kind of clean cutoff for the recording, just going to say thank you all so much for your time. It is always a pleasure to have this many folks and active in the chat, folks. I love it. And I am looking forward to hopefully writing success stories about some of you very soon.